Okay, part 2. Holly smacked herself on the chest, releasing the safety harness. Once the door seal was open, sweet surface air flooded the cabin. There was nothing like that first breath after a ride in the chutes. Oh, she breathed deeply, purging the stale pod air from her lungs. How had the people ever left the surface? Sometimes she wished that her ancestors had stayed to fight it out with the mud people. But there were too many of them. Unlike fairies, who could produce only a single child every 20 years, mud people bred like rodents. Numbers would subdue even magic. She's just answered the question that I was thinking. Why aren't the fairies, with all their powerful magic and technology, how come they're not living where we're living? Now we know. Okay? Well, we know how many humans are. What is it? 7 billion. And we don't know what the fairy numbers are, but there's not many of them. They only have one child every 20 years. Although she was enjoying the night air, Holly could taste traces of pollutants. The mud people destroyed everything they came into contact with. Of course, they didn't live in the mud anymore. Not in this country, at least. Big, fancy dwellings with rooms for everything. Rooms for sleeping, rooms for eating, even a room to go to the toilet. Indoors. Holly shuddered. Imagine going to the toilet inside your own house. Disgusting. The only good thing about going to the toilet was the minerals being returned to the earth. But the mud people had even managed to botch that up by treating the stuff with bottles of blue chemicals. If anyone had told her 100 years ago that humans would be taking the fertile out of fertilizer, she would have told them to get some air holes drilled in their skull. Holly unhooked a set of wings from their bracket. They were double ovals with a clunky motor. She moaned. Ugh, dragonflies. She hated that model. Petrol engine, if you don't mind. And heavier than a pig dipped in mud. Now, the Hummingbird Z7, that was transport. Whisper silent, with a satellite-bounced solar battery that would fly you twice around the world. But there were budget cuts again. On her wrist, the locator began to beep. Right, she was in range. Holly stepped out of the pod. I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Stepped out of the pod and onto the landing bay. She was inside a camouflaged mound of earth, commonly known as a fairy fort. Indeed, the people used to live in these until they were driven deeper underground. There wasn't much technology, just a few external monitors and a self-destruct device, should the bay be discovered. There was nothing on the screens, all clear. The pneumatic doors were slightly askew where the troll had barged through, but otherwise, everything seemed operational. Holly strapped on the wings, stepping into the outside world. The Italian night sky was crisp and brisk, infused with olives and vine. Crickets clicked in the rough grass, and moths fluttered in the starlight. Holly couldn't stop smiling herself. It was worth the risk, every bit of it. Speaking of risk, she checked the locator. The bip was much stronger now. The troll was almost at the town walls. She could appreciate nature after the mission was over. Now, it was time for action. Holly primed the wing's motors, pulling the starter cord over her shoulder. Nothing. She fumed slightly. There's that word, fumed. It was almost the first word we read, wasn't it, in the first paragraph. Every spoilt kid in Haven had a hummingbird for their wilderness holidays, and here were the LEP with wings that were junk when they were new. She yanked the cord again, and then again. On the third wrench it caught, spewing a stream of smoke and fumes into the night. Oh, about time, she grunted, flicking the throttle wide open. The throttle is the accelerator pedal, the accelerator switch. The wings flapped their way up to a steady beat, and with not a little effort, lifted Captain Holly Short into the night sky. Even without the locator, the troll would have been easy to follow. It had left a trail of destruction wider than a tunnel excavator. Holly flew low, skipping between mist hazes and trees, matching the troll's course. The crazed creature had cut a swathe through the middle of a vineyard, turned a stone wall to rubble, and left a guard dog gibbering under a hedge. Then she flew over the cows. It was not a pretty sight. Without going into details, let's just say that there wasn't much left besides horns and hooves. The red bip was louder now. Louder meant closer. She could see the town below her, nestled on top of a low hill, surrounded by a crenellated wall from the Middle Ages. Lights still burned in most windows. Time for a little magic. A lot of the magic attributed to the people is just superstition. Made up stories. But they do have certain powers. Healing. The mesmer and shielding being among them. Mesmer is not a word that I've read before. I think it's a made up word by Ewan Colfer. Shielding is really a misnomer. What fairies actually do is to vibrate at such a high frequency that they are never in one place long enough to be seen. So shielding is a way that fairies make themselves invisible to us. Humans may notice a slight shimmer in the air if they are paying close attention, which they rarely are. And even then, the shimmer is generally attributed to evaporation. Typical of mud people to invent a complicated explanation for a simple phenomenon. Holly switched on her shield. It took a bit more out of her than usual. She could feel the strain and the beads of sweat on her forehead. He really should complete the ritual, she thought. The sooner the better. This ritual, we don't know what it is yet, so we've heard this reference before. The commander asked her about that, but we don't know what it is. Some commotion below broke into her thoughts. Something that didn't gel with the nighttime noises. Holly adjusted the trim on her backpack and flew in for a closer look. Look only, she reminded herself. That was her job. A recon officer was sent up the chutes to pinpoint the target, while the retrieval boys took a nice, cushy shuttle. So that's her job. She's got to locate the troll. The troll was directly below her, pounding against the town's outer wall, which was coming away in chunks beneath his powerful fingers. Holly sucked in a startled gasp. This guy was a monster. He was as big as an elephant, 10 times as mean. But this particular beast was worse than mean. He was scared. Control, said Holly into her mic. Runner located. Situation critical, topside. Root himself was on the other end of the comlink. Clarify, Captain. Holly pointed her video link at the troll. Runner is going through the town wall. Contact imminent. How far away are retrieval? ETA 5 minutes minimum. We're still in the shuttle. Holly bit her lip. Root was in the shuttle. That's too long, Commander. This whole town is going to explode in 10 seconds. I'm going in. Negative, Holly. Captain Short, you don't have an invite. You know the law. Hold your position. But Commander, Root cut her off. No buts, Captain. Hang back. That's an order. Holly's entire body felt like a heartbeat. Petrol fumes were addling her brain. What could she do? What was the right decision to make? Lives or orders? Then the troll broke through the wall and a child's voice split the night. It screamed. Help. An invitation. At a stretch. Sorry, Commander, the troll is light crazy and there are children in there. She could imagine Root's face purple with rage as he spat into the mic. I'll have your stripes, Short. You'll spend the next 100 years on drain duty. It was no use. Holly had disconnected her mic and swooped in after the troll. So this is interesting. They're not, so the concern is that they're going to hurt humanoids. So the fairies are concerned about our welfare. So even though there was obviously this battle between humanoids and the fairies had to live underground because there are not many of them. Sorry, I'm just going back to that bit where we learnt about why the fairies live underground. Sometimes she wished that her ancestors had stayed to fight it out with the mud people. So maybe there wasn't a fight, they just retreated. Anyway, sorry. But basically, yeah, they don't want the troll to hurt us. They try to stop the troll. That Holly wants to stop the troll. Streamlining her body, Captain Short ducked into the hole. She appeared to be in a restaurant, a packed restaurant. The troll had been temporarily blinded by the electric light and was thrashing about in the centre of the floor. The patrons, the customers, were stunned. Even the child's plea had petered out. They just sat gaping. Party hats perched comically on their heads. Waiters froze, huge trays of pasta quivering on their splayed fingers. Remember, they're in Italy. Chubby Italian infants covered their eyes with chubby fingers. It was always like this in the beginning, the shocked silence. Then came the screaming. A wine bottle crashed to the floor. It broke the spell. The pandemonium started. Holly winced. Trolls hated noise almost as much as light. The troll lifted massive shaggy shoulders, its retractable claws sliding out with an ominous shh. Classic predator behaviour. The beast was about to strike. Holly drew her weapon, flicked it up to the second setting. She couldn't kill the troll under any circumstances, not to save humans, but she could certainly put him out until retrieval arrived. Aiming for the weak point at the base of the troll's skull, she let the troll have a long burst of the concentrated ion ray. The beast staggered, stumbled a few steps, then got very angry. It's okay, thought Holly. I'm shielded, invisible. To any onlookers, it would seem as though the pulsing blue beam just emanated from thin air, came out of thin air. The troll rounded on her, its muddy dreadlocks swinging like candles. No panic, it can't see me. The troll picked up a table. I'm invisible, totally invisible. He pulled back a shaggy arm and let fly. Just a slight shimmer in the air. The table tumbled straight towards her head. Holly moved a second too late. The table clipped her backpack, knocking the petrol tank clean off. It span through the air, trailing flammable liquid. Italian restaurants, wouldn't you know it? Full of candles. The tank twirled through an elaborate candelabrum and it burst into flames like some deadly firework. Most of the petrol landed on the troll, and so did Holly. The troll could see her, there was no doubt about it. It squinted at her through the hated light, its brow a rictus of pain and fear. Her shield was off, her magic had gone. Gosh, it's very good, isn't it? It's incredibly imaginative, this world that Colfer has created. I did read for a long time. You can always have breaks, you can always pause and then come back. But yes, I realise I've read for about 35 minutes today. It's good stuff though, isn't it? Really good. Right, see you tomorrow. Bye.